about Canberra? I want to point them out first up. The weekend of upsets. It's not a good weekend for favourites or what you think's going to happen because pretty much it's George Costanza zone. The opposites have happened. But Canberra's performance on Saturday night at Suncorp against Brisbane was unbelievable, given what happened the week before, Woodsy.
Yeah, I don't think anyone expected it, especially with Canberra down the bottom end of the table. Brisbane were flying. Everyone was just saying, when was Brisbane's first loss going to be? But what I loved about it was they just stayed calm and composed. Obviously, no Jack Whiten, but the Broncos are a side that they love to play the power, the fast. They've got a lot of young, exuberant type players. But what they did is they slowed it down really well. They found, when they had their moments to break, Canberra took that break in play, the maximum limit you could. And what it did, it looked like it slowed down the Broncos and it frustrated them. And by the end of the game, they were just so frustrated. And you could see Adam Reynolds kept going to the ref. Can't be doing this, can't be doing that. Look, the last play of the game, I thought, with that penalty with Martin Tapau, I thought, you got to have duty care of the players, but still don't think it was a penalty. He didn't go in to raise the knee at Rapana's head, but it was just well,
he wasn't charged either.
That's what I mean. So it was a tough one, but I just thought Canberra suffocated them and they bored Brisbane out of it.
I was blown away about how good their edge defence was because Brisbane liked to shift.
And you know what? Credit to Jared Croker. He's been out for such a long period of time. People are questioning whether he can come back. And the job he did on Kotoni Staggs, you've seen the form Kotoni Staggs been in this opening month of the footy. He'd been absolutely outstanding. And if you look back at the game now, not too many people are talking about what Kotoni did well because Jared Croker did such an outstanding job. And even carrying the ball, just got over the advantage line, got the quick play of the balls, and just did his job. Look, we don't talk about anything fantastic that he did, but what he did for his team was unbelievable.
Yeah, look, it's so impressed. I was so impressed by the way Canberra went about their business. Like, they had no right to go up there and beat Brisbane on their own patch with the form that Brisbane have shown to start this season. I genuinely was worried about the person behind the scoreboard coming off for a spell on the interchange. They were going to be working that hard.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Seriously, that anticipation was that. So many stars missing. Canberra, leaked a lot of points the back end of last week against Penrith Panthers. But I spoke to Ricky Stewart on yesterday's show, and he spoke about the influence of Josh Papali'i and just how he just decided, no, this is on me, and he really galvanised the group.
They had no Tarpany too.
Yeah,
he was a late withdrawal as well.
And just on the Tapau incident, I had a message from Paul Conlon, acting judge Paul Conlon, who was in charge of the match review committee. We were friends and whatnot, but he basically, his explanation towards it is accidental injury can occur in the course of playing the game legitimately. And I think that's the perfect example of what Tapau and Rapana, the incident that happened there. It's an accidental injury playing the game legitimately. People go, but you've got a duty of care, but that can still happen.
So is that and you're happy with the penalty?
No, I'm saying it shouldn't have been a penalty.
Oh, yeah,
but that's a big call to make. Like, if we look at it at the time, like Brisbane a chance to win the game, they don't get the chance to win the game because of
there's 2 minutes left
of that call.
Yeah.
That's right. And Rapana dropped the ball, but I don't know how harsh you can be. He dropped the ball because he copped the hit to the head. So what do you do in that situation? Is it a knock on in that situation?
I reckon it is. Unlucky. I don't think it's a penalty. I was watching the game. I couldn't believe it. I understand where Adam Reynolds was coming from, going to the ref, saying you're kidding, because there's times in the games that it happens. It was sort of similar to Dale Finucane last year, I think, when he got Crichton, when he come flying out of line, that head clash.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a penalty, but like Jimmy said, it's just things that can go wrong in a game, and there's no intent, to hurt someone like the way they did.
Well, it's the big what if. I mean, if Rapana doesn't look like an extra from Terminator that's just been wiped out and there's blood gushing out everywhere, is it a different thing? I'm of the thought that Marty had the opportunity to not do what he did. I know he's galloping down, he's trying to put pressure, but he doesn't need to actually make contact because the guy is...
This happened. Look, when we slow it down and, you got to understand that people aren't thinking like that. It's impossible to have that thought at that moment in time.
And Jimmy will tell you.
You're acting on instinct. You're going down there to put pressure on him, but in no way. I don't think he can pull out, because I think if he could, he would have.
What about if he does pull out and then Rapana gets up and makes the line break?
Well, that's right, yeah.
And then your coach, you get back in at full time, you've cost your team the game, and it's like, well, why didn't you attack him? And this is why I've attacked
Well, I've heard
him.
the argument that, it's reckless, he should have been, it was careless. But the reality is, if he doesn't chase that hard and he's sprinting down, he's not in a position to make a tackle if he needs to.
That's correct.
So you're actually asking the player to actually not play the game in the way that it needs to be played.
Well, that's it. That's exactly the point. It's you can't play with that at the forefront of your mind. I've got a duty of care. You can't approach each tackle with thinking, I've got a duty of care here. You know certain positions that are allowed and aren't, but in a chase like that, like you got rocks in your head if you think there's a duty of care that's even a smidge of a thought.
Michael, do you get the feeling around you're talking to a lot of people each and every week, that they're going down the path, it felt like this, was it last year or the year before, that things are popping up in terms of penalties and charges on the basis of players getting hurt? And I don't know where rugby league ends up by thinking that it can kind of wipe away the ability to get hurt out there, because it's such a contact game.
I know, and a lot of the ramifications are being based around the impact of the injury. I know with Judiciary, they take into consideration how much someone's hurt when they're determining how long they're going to hand a suspension down for. And they give the argument that, well, if you're driving and you hurt someone, you get more time if you're driving. If you hurt someone and you kill them, you get more time than you do if you just leave them in hospital. So I don't know what the right thing to do is, because I'm getting frustrated with the fact that there are a lot more things that are happening in the game at the moment where your players are ending up in, not only penalised, and ending up in the bin, and then we're looking back at it and saying, oh, you know what, it shouldn't have even been a penalty.
Like with the
hip
case on
drop.
the one here.
But it's like the hip drop as well. It happened on, I think it was Good Friday. I was watching the Bulldog game. Preston gets done. Cameron Murray, I reckon it was worse. And he didn't even get a penalty or nothing. They didn't even go back to it. Well, I think we'll go back into that later on in the show. But
for me, my big issue with that is the fact that we're going back.
100%, I hate it.
Let's get to
five
it now.
plays. Going back five plays.
It happened with Murata Niokore in the Sharks game the week before, and then because he made contact with the leg, the thing as well, it's a tough game. He lost his legs in the tackle. They say there's no duty of care. It's hard, hey Jimmy, when you make a tackle, you don't want to go in and lose your legs. He's diving at Talakai and he just clips him from behind. And even the same with the later on in the game with Dale Finucane on Charles Nickel Cockstag. Nickel Cockstag, like we just spoke before, he was always going to stay down because it happened early in the game. And then the only decision the ref had to do was give him 10 in the bin because he's already done that. He showed you what the precedent that they've already set. So we're crossing a tough line here. And what I want to know is, what's the actual understanding of a hip drop?
Well, it wasn't Jacob Preston, I can tell you that much.
And I've been watching games, and I watched one yesterday.
But you know what?
No, but I watched one yesterday, Chammas. Jaden Sewell did the exact same thing and got nothing.
No, that was if we're going to be consistent, I don't get how Jaden Sewell didn't end up for 10 in the bin. But
exactly.
I think to manage this issue properly, no one wants to see players getting injured due to a hip drop tackle.
No, not at all.
I'd like to see someone smarter than I am to look at how and why this has become a recent trend. I don't believe teams are practicing. I've got a theory around how it's happening to the more powerful, explosive athletes, where they push through the line and then players are holding on to them, and they have no other option than to fall down. They're a victim of their own.
Isn't that what you're taught to drop and slide down when hip drop, but
when they come through you, it's like, oh, I'm holding on here. We've seen examples of players carrying other players for like 5-10 meters. But I think if we want to get the least amount of negative press out of this, please don't take the game back. Put the incident on report. Even in the Preston example here, let's say the referee wanted to Simbin him. Tom Burgess drops the ball. Referee blows his time. It's a knock on. It's scrum feed the Bulldogs, but they go, you're on report and you're gone 10 minutes bin for that incident that happened back there. Don't let Souths have the full set of 6 and then go back.
Woodsy, with the way it's happening, it feels like everyone, the last couple of years in particular, everyone gets excited with the phrase post-contact meters.
Yes.
I don't know if inside, and Jimmy, inside the four walls of a dressing room, coaches come to players and say, oh, look, mate, you had 25 post-contact meters last week, you need more or whatever. But it is a stat that's looked at.
We don't really talk about that, but I think Jimmy said it. It's coming a lot of the times on those explosive runners. So what they're doing, they're beating the first tackle, and the guys are they brace for that contact, but they're not getting a good shot on him. Like you watch that Talakai one, he gets through the line.
Yeah.
And as he's coming through the line, Niokore sort of falls down a bit. And then the only way to get him down is to squeeze him on his legs. And then accidentally his legs swing by because of the momentum that Talakai's going through the tackle. So he loses his legs. It's not something that we practice. It's just he's been beaten. So the attackers won a good carry, but because it was so explosive, it swung Niokore around, and it's similar to Preston. They kept going, so Preston's trying to bring him to
the
down.
defender can't just like slip half off and then
we
let
can't
go.
just fall for tackle, because if you go back inside to your coach and say, "Oh, I'll let go because I was scared of doing a hip drop," mate, you're not going to get picked again for first grade.
It's the same theory as that Marty Tapal's done.
Exactly right.
It's like what you don't go all out because you worry about someone getting injured.
100%.
There was one in the Newcastle game in the Warriors. Tamari Mountain, he's now stuffed his leg for the rest of he's fractured his leg. And Phoenix Crossland, he dropped like not even half a foot, but his weight ended up going down. He was trying to stop the try. He was doing the right thing. Now, if Tamari Martin stays down and doesn't get up, and bloody how tough was he to get up and then in the next set of 6 take a carry, and then he realised, I've got a major problem here, I've got to go. But if he stayed down, does he then get the penalty at that end and it changes the momentum?
But the thing
of that
yesterday,
game?
like Jimmy said, Jaden Sewer, the bloke did stay down.
Yeah.
And nothing happened. I was sitting home on the couch with my father-in-law and I go, he's going to get 10 the bin here.
Yeah, we're waiting for it.
Especially after watching
Is that
Friday.
the reaction to the overreaction?
That's what I'm saying. But that's the precedent that they've set now.
Yeah.
And
And you can't-
I'm a player too.
You could do it as of tomorrow, but don't do it halfway through a round.
Exactly right.
Cowboys, guys, are they the biggest letdown so far this year?
Probably have to say
Yeah.
so. Yeah, I think
Yeah, I
so.
think they are, yeah.
Because they had so much hype around them. The young kid, the back rowers that they've, Helium Lukey.
They've been decimated by injury, though, the Cowboys. They
Yeah, but
haven't.
so have a lot of others. Look at Newcastle. Newcastle have been
Look at the
absolutely
mob they got
decimated.
beaten by. on the
Cronulla as
weekend.
well have been. I know they were missing Nico Hines, but Cronulla, I think Cronulla and Cowboys are 12th, 13th, aren't they?
Yeah, I think everyone would have had them in the top 4 or top 6 at least. And they went into the season with such a big, focus on them to go one step further and try to get to the grand final. So I think you could probably say, and listen to Todd Payton's, comments after the game, it's hard to beat one side, let alone 2, because they keep beating themselves and not giving themselves an opportunity to win the game. So they're poor discipline, losing the ball, penalties out of yardage. It's very unlike the Cowboys of the year before that we did see. So it's probably a fair tag for them at the moment.
Do you think they overachieved last year?
I was going to say that. Do you think the competition was a softer competition? That the 2 or 3 really good teams, and then below the Sharks and the Cowboys, there were a lot of dog shit teams. Can we say that? There were a lot of teams.
You just did.
Yeah, so
There were.
Yeah,
there were-
like
there
It's
were
running
struggles.
on YouTube now.
But
Thanks,
it feels
Michael.
like there's between
like Penrith was so far ahead last year,
Yeah.
and then there was a few teams had a bit of a quieter season, which elevated
The Roosters, Melbourne.
the Cowboys and the Sharks, perhaps.
I reckon, and 6 to about 12, I reckon, is a lot more even than it was last year.
Yeah.
And,
I think the whole
Dogs
competition
are-
is a lot more easy
yeah.
even this year.
I just saw things from the Cowboys on the other night. They were trying to look. I won't ever say the easy option, but there were some questionable decisions where they went away from what they
But
got
you
at.
know
So Valentine Holmes basically got them back into the game where they just went, here, have the ball, and he carried 3 over the line. But Scott Drinkwater was back, Ruben Cotter was back, obviously short of a run. But Chad Townsend at one stage had 2 tired forwards in front of him, 5 metres out from the line, and decided to try and put through a grubber.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know if that is an extension of the mentality of the team, that they're trying to find their groove and they're looking for new and inventive ways rather than just going bang, bang. But
You mentioned Josh Drinkwater. I'm a huge fan of him, but he's an all or nothing type player. So he'll throw the 3-man cutout pass. It looks good when everything's going well. But when you got to build yourself a game, get back into it like they were on the weekend. They're down by a couple of points. You don't need to go for that miracle play. You just need to get it, like you said, a little grubber in behind, get a repeat set, start building pressure. We don't need to score for every play. And I just think sometimes they just chance their arm too much. And I've been in teams where that's happened before. I've played with blokes like Benji Marshall that love, they're going for that huge play. But the consequences of those plays, it's really hurting the rest of the team at the moment.
Do you think the Cowboys will live to regret letting Hamaso go? Like, is Drinkwater the sure option?
Oh, it's easy to say that at the moment because he's had such a great start of the year. But you got to remember, Hemiso was there last year as well. He was getting very limited game time. The form that Drinky was in last year was absolutely
I agree.
phenomenal.
I think they made the right call. But seeing the way he's playing at the Dolphins at the moment and looking long term, is that one that you think?
Or do you think?
I think in hindsight you go, we shouldn't let him go. But at the time,
Yeah.
it was the correct decision. And also the Hammer wasn't getting the game time he deserved.
And that's what Todd Payton
But
alluded to after the game. He said that.
The other thing, him not having Hammer there, is that putting as much pressure on him knowing that his fullback jersey is just his? There's no one coming to bite at the pieces to get that jersey off him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is that a thing when you're training and you know you've got depth in a side that it elevates your level?
Certainly,
Jimmy?
100%.
Certainly puts pressure on. Yeah.
You know you have that one bad game, eh, Jimmy?
Yeah, and then you go on. Also for the Cowboys, they had a lot of international representation at the World Cup. A lot of Origin jerseys handed out last year, and perhaps that consistent level of being in big games, they've crashed back down to earth, and it's taken them longer than expected to get back to where they were. I know last season, we constantly heard about this grueling preseason that Todd Payton had put them through. Grueling, changing times, a real mentally challenge,
ridiculous mountain.
Yeah, and not telling them when they were going to be done. A real mentally challenging preseason schedule. So I just wonder whether or not they've been able to do that, considering the amount of players away on rep duties, and whether or not that's affected them going into this season. But let's not forget as well, last year they didn't start all that great. They had an awful 6 foot, one of the worst games of rugby league football you're ever going to see. 6-4 it was. I remember it well. It was that bad. You remember it.
But the other thing, what you got to take as well is there was no hype on them last year. So teams were going up there and we're playing the Cowboys. This year, they come third or fourth last year. Everyone's up to play against them. So they're not going to get a week where a side's like, we're playing the Cowboys, if we show up, we need to show up. Every team that's playing against them this year is showing up ready to know they're a top 4 side.
Jimmy mentioned the World Cup, right? I was speaking to people at the Cowboys yesterday, and I've spoken to a couple of the clubs who have been hurt by injury, and they think there's a link between the shortened preseason. So many guys came back from the World Cup, only had 6-7 weeks before the start of the season. We even brought the season forward this year by a week, and they think that the injuries are a result of
Look at Penrith.
not having a preseason. Is that fair? Do you think as a player
100%.
you feel underdone and you get more injured if you haven't had an extended preseason?
Yeah, I do. I reckon I've done a couple of them in my time. Jimmy would have done heaps, played a lot of international rep duties. So I know when you come back, you're sort of chasing your tail, especially if you don't look after yourself in that little bit of a break prior to Christmas when you get off, because the other boys are flying. They've had 6 weeks pre-Christmas when you spend most of your time catching up. So you look at Penrith. They got beaten in the World Club Challenge by St Helens. They lost their round 1 and I think round 2 or 3. Yeah. So it hasn't been the best start from them blokes, but
they were horrible on the weekend.
And especially when players are adjusting to that. Like, the really good players are professional and they know how to manage rep football at the end of the year. Where those ones that are new to the game, you just think, I'll start back in January and I'll go for a little trot here and there. You've got to take yours. You got to own that, and you got to be responsible for that. And I in the early part of my career, I had youth on my side, obviously, but I probably didn't manage the time off alone as well as what I did when I matured as a player and realised, well, hang on, I've got to take responsibility here and put miles in my own legs, because if not, I'm going to be too far behind the 8 ball by the time we come back to training, and then that's going to affect my start to the season.
Can you find your legs at the start of the season? Say you look at Penrith. I mean, seriously, their second half against Canberra and their first half against Manly, just quietly, was a good one to get out to Blacktown for that one. But that was on the verge of what they came up with in the first half in the grand final against Para, which is probably the most complete performance in a big game.
Yeah, anyone that's questioning whether they've still got it or not, and they've done it with, Liam Martin didn't even play on the weekend. They had Scott Sorensen and Zach Hosking on their edges, and just watching Cleary and Luai
and Yo
steer them around the ship, and Yo as well, and they were just, to watch it live, it's a lot different when you watch on TV, but just the way they move, and then the kid, the fullback, mate,
what a freak.
He's
Dylan,
mate.
Yeah.
What's he worth, Woodsy? Like, he's only on $500,000.
Oh, they've got him for peanuts
the best
over
value
there,
for
mate.
money player in the competition.
By far.
What's he worth?
I'd pay $1 million for him.
That
mate,
much?
Yeah, mate. What he does, he positions himself so well. He gets his numbers right all the time, which a lot of fans understand. Get your numbers right. For your defensive line, that is one of the hardest things to do. And when I played with James Tedesco at the Tigers, he struggled a little bit like that early on, but then as he's grown into his career, it's something that he's learnt really well at Roosters is his positioning and his numbers. And you know what it's like, Jimmy. If you get your numbers wrong, the attacking sides these days just pick you apart straight away. And that's something that goes, it's we don't speak enough of it with what he gets right with it.
Well, I think what Dylan Edwards does so well is he complements Cleary and Luai so well. So he knows that they can do the X Factor things. And Dylan Edwards just works his nuts off, gets everything right consistently, and makes himself available for opportunities. And he's an outstanding effort. He's all over the park, and he lets Cleary and Luai take care of business. I think as well with Penrith, obviously, we talk about the combination of Yo to Cleary to Luai. But that last year, that began with Api Coruscant. Now, his method and his style at dummy half is unmatched. There's no one quite like Api at the way his ability to get out, the look, the look into no-look pass, his distribution skills, the amount of attention he draws in. So we talk about just a little rejig and change of style of 9. I think as well Penrith are starting to adjust to that and realise that it's not Appy anymore. We've got some other people in there, and I really like that Sonny Luke. Come on,
he's good.
And they're learning to play with him now. He's getting a lot longer minutes. I think there's an element of trust there, where Coach Cleary's starting to trust him a little bit more, and I think the players are starting to enjoy and thrive off playing off him. There was a great try set up where he just looked, and then bang, hits back the other side. He's playing really well. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So put your general manager hat on for a second. Penrith are in this situation now. They've just gone and extended Isaiah Yeo long term. They've extended Moses Leota long term. They've got the most players of any competition locked up until 2027, including Nathan Cleary and Brian To'o. They've got a situation now with Jerome Luai, Dylan Edwards, and Liam Martin. Let's focus on Jerome and Dylan. They're both probably in for a payday. Dylan's on $500,000, Jerome's probably on 7s, and they've played above that for a couple of years now. How do you prioritise? Because there's going to be a conversation over the next month or two. How do you prioritise between your 6 and your 1 going forward?
I've got a theory.
1.
I'll go 1 too.
You would?
You got to go Dylan Edwards.
Yeah,
Dylan?
your fullback's more important.
He's the glue.
5'8".
I'd do what they've done with Appy, and they've obviously looked what's coming through in the production line, and whatever your best surefire thought is between the backup 1 who's playing Cup.
Well, it's probably the backup 6. It's a kid named Jack Cole. They've got high raps on Jack Cole, who they've elevated into the top 30.
Good problem to have.
And well, Nathan's on so much that sometimes I think it's going to be a concern for Penrith in the coming months.
I think
when
Fisher
they sit
Harris
down.
is on big money there too.
Yeah, he's on close to $1 million as well.
They've obviously, they've lost Crichton, Kickow, but not too dissimilar to Melbourne Storm when they went through their salary cap issues. It's no surprise that they kept the 179.
They let GI go before they let
Billy go.
Yeah. 179 were all kept. So, don't be surprised to see, because they are so influential, you can put players around them. Melbourne have done it for such a long time now. But I think you're probably right there. They'll have a look at who's coming up. And also, there could be a conversation of, and I think they had the same conversation with Crichton, this is our best offer. If you want to stay at this back-to-back premiership winning teams and play with Nathan Cleary, Luai, but
he also wants to play fullback too, doesn't he?
Yeah, with Isaiah Yeo and with all these great players that we have here, Moses Leota and James Fisher-Harris, you're going to play with these guys. You're going to have to take.
Scotty Pippen at the Bulls.
We can't give you your market value,
Yeah, it's a
and
tough
you're going to have to accept that. And that, we see the Roosters attract players for under market value. Like players go there for less than their market value, because they're a higher probability of playing finals football, winning premierships, etc., etc.
That's the sombrero, isn't it?
Woodsy's rolling his eyes over there.
That's what
he's got one club left to tick off the. He hasn't got an offer.
So perhaps Penrith's retention strategy could be around. Look, guys, you want to stay at
Yeah,
the club.
yeah.
You've got to.
That's the one thing they have.
Which they
What
tried
are you
to do with
hearing that-
Stephen Crichton, to be
Yeah.
honest, though.
I think
Like,
didn't the Manly boys do that, like Glenn Stewart, Brett Stewart's, the Watmows, and that's what caused the big stink with Cherry Evans.
Cherry Evans, yeah. They felt as though he hadn't earned his right to get the big payday that they'd sacrificed over the years.
But the other thing is, when do you earn your right?
When someone's willing to pay you X amount.
That's what I'm saying. So if
So Luai's going to, judging off what Nico Hines and Mitchell Moses have got, is Jerome Luai $1 million plus player?
Yeah. On market value, he is.
He won't be
yeah,
a Penrith.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
Well,
Mark,
What are you hearing, Michael? about that?
But that's it. If he prioritises the dollar over
If
staying,
Mitchell-
because he's a local lad as well.
Yeah.
Like there's an attraction to him to stay there. Like he's got to weigh that up. Like if this becomes a genuine, Penrith can only offer him under market value. Or another club, 18th franchise may come in and offer him $1 million plus. That's where he's got to weigh that decision up.
Well, if Mitchell can get 1.3 in the open market, honestly,
Well,
Jerome Luai's
two-time
won
premiership
two
winner.
competitions in a row. He's
Took
played
Samoa
to
to
the
the World
World
Cup.
Cup final, which is they've never done that in the I've heard of.
No. And the other thing that does is prove to people, you know what, he's not Nathan Cleary's puppet.
That's it.
He can take a team.
Does he want to be known as a bloke that can go out and do it himself?
Exactly. And that might be
that might be
the motivator.
Again, this is where he'll have to weigh all that up.
But then,
can I stand on my own 2 feet?
But
here?
like you said, Jimmy,
and these are
he's a local boy.
Well, I know, and that's where he'll have to pay up. But you know what? The recruitment managers and people are really smart. So if you're sat with Luai, that's what you tell them. Mate, this is your team. Mate,
That's right.
And
I think it's happening.
They'll play on that.
I think it's
teams
happening.
will play on that.
What
you
teams,
can be
Chammas?
the
Oh,
star.
no, I don't know if he's going to walk out, but I think there'll be a part of.
What teams do you reckon would be interested in
Jimmy hit the nail on the head. Oh, well, I think Canterbury would be interested, yeah. I think.
Well, where are they getting the money from?
Canterbury.
Well, I'm not
Come
going
on.
into salary, but
Are you
he's
still
got
getting
the-
paid off the Bulldogs?
I
So
was-
Stephen
no, last
Crichton is
year,
one of his
last
best
year.
mates. Stephen Crichton's one of his best mates, right?
You're still getting paid there, aren't you? Sorry.
You're still getting paid as well.
No, long gone.
Stephen Crichton's one of his best mates. Cameron Ciraldo's worked with him for a long time.
Yep.
There's a few Penrith boys there. It makes sense. And to be fair, they need a 7. And if we're talking about Jerome Luai standing on his own 2 feet, and if that's the motivator to leave Penrith, not saying that he wants to leave Penrith, he may take unders and stay. But if that's the motivator, go play with
I
Matt,
understand it's
go play with Matt
motivated,
Burton.
but there's also a thing called a salary cap that they've got to work around.
Yeah, there's players that are leaving the Bulldogs in the
Do you
next
think
couple
he
of
could
years.
pl- do you
I
think he could
Kyle
play
Flanagan's
7?
on about 600,000. You'd
Do you
imagine he
could
won't
play
be
Do
there.
you think he'd want to play 7?
I don't know. I'll be putting words in his mouth. I don't know what his motivation is. He may turn around and say, whatever you can give me, Penrith, give me, and I'll take it and stay. Or he may turn around and say, let's test the market.
It's hard to tell if he can play 7 because he's got Nathan there, and then he's got Isaiah Yeo, who basically plays like the other. Like they've got 2 halfbacks.
Yeah, he just drives on his left edge, and then
He goes
when he
pop,
runs
pop,
that option, just comes back.
and he's
under.
more a running
Yeah.
player, Jerome. So yeah, I mean, good to have options. I'm
Good headache,
sure
good
that-
Penrith.
Good time to be off if you're a half.
Is he off? What?
Yeah, they're
is
both.
he off?
Well, Dylan and
sorry, next
Jerome
year.
on November 1 become free agents. So Penrith are in the process now of working out what to do. And if it's money that they're both after, you'd imagine at least one of them going to
How
market.
old is Luai?
I think he'd be 20. He played with Nathan. What's Nathan, 25? He'd be in
24,
mid-20s.
I think Nathan
Yeah,
is.
he'd
Yeah.
be mid-20s.
Hey guys, Dolphins outstanding. We touched on the Cowboys before, but kind of didn't mention how good the Dolphins were up there on the weekend, and also the Knights. A big win. That was a difficult way to stop the momentum that the Warriors undoubtedly had in that second half, and they did really well and stopped it and got the job done with a few injury worries in the second half. Pick one of them, Dolphins or Newcastle, to make the 8.
I'd love to say Dolphins.
They're both there at the moment. The Titans are in the 8, and
What a
you've got
story!
the Warriors in
What
the
a
8.
story Dolphins would be, because I remember everyone said, "Yeah, that Roosters game, they'd be up for it." Wayne would get them fired up, and then, then the next week they won. I think they won the first 3 in a row, and they only just got beat by the Broncos. And
Then they were zapped for the Dragons game.
yeah, they lost Sean O'Sullivan. I thought he was going to be a big hole to fill, and going up there against the Cowboys on the weekend, I didn't give them much of a chance. I tipped the Cowboys, and I thought Cowboys were going to win well. No Jesse Bromwich, no Felice Kafusi, the 2 senior men in their forward pack. But, geez, blokes just stood up. I just couldn't believe that. Wayne must have they lose Jared Wallace, one of their senior players, after being on the field for 10 minutes. He got a big HIA. And just the hammer. Like, we spoke about him before. I didn't think he was this good. He is absolutely flying at the moment. Jermaine Osarko's been quiet the last couple of years. Edric Lee's first game. He just gets the best out of the players he's got, and I think it'd be a tremendous story for the NRL to see them in the top 8, because a lot of people said, yeah, they'll start off well and then the bubble will burst, but, mate, he's doing an extremely well job up there.
In the 2 games they've lost, though, Woodsy, they lost their halfback in the early in the middle of their game. They lost Sean O'Sullivan against the Broncos.
Yes.
And they lost Milford early in the first half against the Dragons.
Half,
And
they could have won both those
most
games.
teams would lose that game anyway. They could have won both those games.
I was worried about the Dolphins after the performance against the Dragons.
Yep.
I thought, oh no, the bubble's well and truly burst. Understood why they were up for game 1. Understood why they were up for game 2. They came down and beat Newcastle, and they sort of in second gear. Newcastle were decimated by injuries.
Yeah.
But that Dragons game, there was a few concerns because Wayne Bennett, I know him as a coach, his goal line defence is paramount. And we saw Little go over from dummy half, which was a soft try, and then Blake Laurie, they conceded 2 soft tries out of dummy half, and I thought, oh no, they've gone here. This is it. And then for him to re-galvanise that group, to go out and play to the standards where they don't necessarily beat themselves and make life difficult for opposition. They're not going to be easy beats by any stretch, and it's a fantastic story. It really is. I think if you had to, who do I think will finish higher up, the Dolphins and the Knights? I think all that depends on Kalen Ponga's return and how he can perform physically, psychologically for the next sort of 15 rounds. Origin in there as well, potentially.
Has Wayne, with what he's done at the Dolphins, just extended his career? We all thought he'd go there for 2 years. The Dolphins would,
Does he take over the next?
He's there for a PR.
Well, the NRL should make him do the next franchise.
But you look what he's done with blokes. I was just looking at Lemu. When I was at the Tigers, he was in the 20s at the Tigers, and they didn't give him much of a chance. He goes up to the Cowboys, plays a few games, comes to the Redcliffe Dolphin. He's been absolutely outstanding. He was one of the best players on the field the other night. And
Jerry Marshall King.
Jerry Marshall King. Thomas Gilbert.
So good.
How good was Thomas Gilbert on his return back to Townsville on the weekend?
So PVL announces the 18th team with an asterisk next to it, and it says wherever this team goes, Wayne Bennett has to be there.
Well, he did that for the Dolphins. He made it clear that Wayne Bennett had to be the coach.
Or Wayne Bennett or Craig Bellamy, you reckon?
I'll tell you what should happen.
Or Phil Gould.
If this ends in tears at the Tigers, if this ends in tears with Tim Sheens, I'll tell you what Benji should be doing.
Get Wayne.
Calling his old mate.
That's a fair point, yeah.
What, to go up there or to bring him there?
Yeah, well, if Sheens fails as a coach, if Sheensy fails as a coach, how do you go into a coaching director role and oversee a program that you just failed to bring into action?
You do make a very good point.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
He's not going to be in it. I don't know what his job contract is with the Dolphins after he finishes. We know Christian Wolf takes over in 25. But anyway, if Benji then is looking for some sort of senior figure, we call him Wayne Bennett, and they are thick as thieves.
Yeah.
I think he still talks to him a lot now.
Yeah.
And a lot of his coaching that Benji does, it's a lot of what Wayne brought it to him at South Sydney.
Make it happen, Woodsy. You're a Tiger Whisperer.
Well, you got
more,
hang on, you got a direct line to Hatchard tell us about.
Can I say that? You got more contacts to Tigers than I do, Chammas.
You might be able to get a job out of it as well. You Wayne, and Benji. It'd be great.
Well, also, Wayne. People will say, "Oh, Wayne's in his 70s and whatnot." But if you know how he lives his life, he's very active, very healthy. Like 70 is not what it used to be.
He trains with the boys, doesn't he?
Yeah. He trains in the gym. Doesn't drink alcohol. Looks after his body. And then I was even Roy Hodgson. Just taken over at Crystal Palace. He's 75.
They won 5-1.
He's 75. Like it's not what that's not what it used to be.
Yeah,
it really isn't. Like it's still.
He's a good man manager, isn't he, Jimmy?
Wayne Bennett, he's a good people person.
He's a person, yeah.
And he trusts his players.
I think Mal Meninga's the same.
He trusts his players to implicitly. He builds trust, and Wayne isn't going to come up with like a magnificent game plan. He just.
That's what he's got Christian Wolf there for. He's got the other coaches.
All the coaches will look after that. He just gets you to go above and beyond. He gets you to realise what your potential is and play to that potential.
How can you be a coach for over 40 years and not drink? That is incredible in itself. That's better than his record, that is.
Unbelievable.
How he's been able to keep that. Anyway.
It's like eating white chocolate. How do you do that?
WTF moment of the week, gents. Dan Ganane's outside. He's just getting ready for the call. Listening to this, we've got Para and West Tigers, and Dan needs his prep time. He's got to get his room temperature right. He's got to get his water at the room temperature as well. But WTF moment.
Well, mine was what yours is, but I'm not going to say it.
He's your teammate.
I'll leave that for yours, Mr. Adam Peacock. But look, honestly, I just think we went in the hip drop tackle. I don't understand what's a hip drop and what's not a hip drop tackle at the moment.
Is
Because
the entire playing group saying this as well?
Well, I know the blokes I've spoke to, it's like,
What is and what isn't?
yeah, we're not sure yet. So
That's a worry.
for me, it's like, when happened to Murata Niokore, Dale Finucane's one. I don't even think
Yeah.
Oh, come on. So for
Michael?
me, it's just the hip drop. So can we just get a bit of what is a hip drop? I'd love to get that.
Graham Annesley with a bit of clarity on it this
Yes,
week,
please.
if possible.
I'm not going to go on the hip drop. What about the nut drop? What about Tom Burgess on Josh Reynolds? And didn't get and then the Dogs got penalised the next tackle for Josh being offside.
I think he was just trying to keep him out of the ruck, wasn't he?
I spoke to Grubby yesterday, actually. I said, did you want to say anything? He said, no, I don't want to make a big deal of it. He said, I'm just surprised he could find
Yeah,
them.
it was funny.
God love him.
James, what's yours?
Jetstar?
Yeah. Well, look.
Sorry, mate.
It is what it is. But look, we were in the airport, and the plane that we were going to catch from Gold Coast back to Sydney was the one that was flying from Sydney
Up to the
up to there. So they knew it was late.
Yeah.
But then they tell you about
Yeah.
2 minutes before. You're like, you obviously know.
Did you get any compensation for it? Did they give you a free feed or a free beer?
He ended up making money on the blackjack table. What do you want?
No, but
Yeah.
that wasn't from Jetstar. That was
From his own intuition.
yes.
Well,
Look, a few years ago, I wouldn't have handled that very well, but I've done a lot of work on myself, and what's the point in getting angry? But I just
Exactly.
wish they'd have told us earlier, then we wouldn't have had to waste valuable drinking time.
I've got an uncle
on the
who
way
works-
to the airport and then back.
I've got an uncle who works for Jetstar, so I made sure he looked after you, given what you said about me on air the other day.
Yeah.
1-1.
I actually thought of a podcast name for you, Snitches and Bitches.
Yes, mate.
Oh, I don't know how I'll top that for my WTF moment, but I'll chime in.
Oh, you'll be able to top it.
Brad Parker. I love him. I love his effort. I mean, he didn't have the greatest night the other night, but why he decides to try and trap a ball like Lionel Messi trying to trap a kick from a goalkeeper when Nathan Cleary has sent it all the way up to the Hubble Space Telescope on the way down, and he's trying to do it on the run as well. I think Bradley would like that moment back. Am I right, Woodsy?
I just said, look, no one wanted to say anything to train. I said, mate, I'll just say it. What are you doing, Parks? Come on, mate. And he goes, honestly,
You've only just got there.
he goes, honestly, yeah, mate, they either love you or hate you. Jimmy."
Yeah, exactly.
And he goes, I have no idea what I was doing. And then he goes, to make it even worse, I tried to put a big hit on and almost took the bloke's head off. And he goes, I just tried to get the front foot to Siebes and just said, Siebes, this is what happened. And Siebes like, mate, just don't kick the ball.
Not Manly's not. Quick one. Have you got a roundup? Reedy does his roundup here, but seeing he's off with Jim Nance, I don't know if Reedy
What's
actually...
a roundup?
Just like a bit
Well,
of news or whatever like that. Anything.
I
something.
actually,
You're a journalist?
No, I messaged Braith and said, how's our man Reedy going?
Yeah.
And then he sent me a little video, but I couldn't save it because it was one of those ones that just goes away. And it was here, little Reedy, the little gibber, just trying to get a photo of that girl at that pre-party. Yeah. Can't wait to see when he gets back.
There's a few of those on the internet already, Reedy, so you don't need to bother. Last one about Reedy, though. He would be crapping it right now because it now, or maybe a few hours ago, is about the time when they pull the names out of the hat for the media that get to play the course the day after.
Wow.
And we don't know. We haven't heard word from Augusta if Brent Reid is going to get his way
I hope he gets
and have
picked.
173 around Augusta
I'd love to
National.
see it.
I'd love to see him get picked, then it rain and he can't get on.